Hello, BookTube. Well, as you know, if you're looking at the calendar, today's Wednesday, and Wednesday is New Comic Book Day, and that's true even in the snowy fastness of Vermont, where the parking lots are half trucks and half bears. And we went to the comic shop. We went. There's a Newbury Comics that is it's laid out exactly the same as the Newbury Comics that I go to. The etoliated, lip-pierced little things at the counter are exactly the same as the ones at my Newbury Comics. The selection is every bit as crappy and haphazard and poorly curated as the Newbury Comics that I go to. It's like a little burst of old home. And with Newbury Comics, those of you who might not be from America, you might not be familiar. Newbury Comics is a wide. It's all over the American Northeast. It has comics right there in the title, but it's only a tiny little part of the store that is actual comics. All the rest is Iron Man socks and Funko Pops and vinyl and a whole bunch of other stuff. You have to go to one little cobweb-ridden, despised corner of the store to get to comic books. And I don't, as you know on this channel, I don't typically buy weekly comics anymore. The one exception is going to be the Legion of Superheroes, Brian Michael Bendis' Legion of Superheroes. That's going to stay until he does serious violence to the concept of the Legion of Superheroes. Right now, he's doing minor violence, race swapping, gender swapping. I'm sure that in coming issues, every single member of the team will be non-binary. That is minor. That is pandering for a current year, so I can put up with that. I'm talking something major, like for instance, telling people that it is now canon that Jor-El survived the destruction of Krypton. Once he does that, and it's only a matter of time until he does, then I'll stop. But until then, the Legion of Superheroes is the only thing that I'll be getting on a weekly or a monthly basis. And there was an issue of the Legion there at the Newbury Comics today that I had in my hand to buy. It's the second issue of Legion of Superheroes Millennium. I've shown you it on this channel. There was a 2-part introduction to the world of the Legion. And Legion of Superheroes Millennium #2 had 2 covers. One was by the famous fan favorite artist Brian Hitch, and it was ugly. It was absolutely terrible, and it was for major distribution. And the other was a great cover, absolutely great, that showed in the foreground a Legion flight ring. And you see John Kent, Superman's teenage son, reaching forward to put the ring on his finger. And I had it in my hand and I thought, what on earth are you doing? You're going to pay $5 for a cover when you can get a thumbnail of it online anytime you want? Because I already have the issue. I just have it with a crappy cover. So I put that back. And I was looking just at the comics. I don't follow any of these things. So none of them really appealed to me. But if you remember on this channel for Comic Book Wednesday, for a while there I was following. Marvel Comics has recently regained the franchise for Conan the Barbarian and the Savage Sword of Conan after a lapse of 50 years. When they had it 50 years ago, they had all of these adaptations were written lovingly by Roy Thomas, who is the gigantic Conan fan. And they were drawn by Barry Windsor Smith back when he was just Barry Smith and had hair down to here. And they were drawn by John Buscema, and he did great, great work. And they were great. Those issues were great. I had them over and over again. I loved them and read them over and over again. I am going to get the big new color omnibus issues that Marvel has been bringing out of them. But Marvel has dropped the ball. Current year Marvel has dropped the ball on the Conan franchise. They started out great. Conan the Barbarian and the Savage Sword of Conan were absolutely great. But all the comics commentators from all along the spectrum, from the toxic fan neckbeard man boys all the way to the normal fans who don't have a dog in any fight, all of them were saying, well, look at Marvel Comics these days. All men are villains. All testosterone is poison. Everything is toxic masculinity. Conan the Barbarian is the living personification of toxic masculinity. He's the living personification of what all of the leftist progressives who have infested Marvel Comics hate more than anything. He embodies the same qualities that have led these people to kill Thor, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Because those are the Marvel staples they absolutely cannot stand to be on the comics stands. So everybody on that spectrum was predicting that sooner or later, Conan is going to meet a group of badass women, and he's going to be a bumbling doofus, and they're going to save him. And when that happened, the sales on Conan comic, that did, of course, inevitably happen. And when that happened, the monthly sales on Conan the Barbarian and Savage Sword of Conan went from the high 30,000s, 36,000, 37,000, to cratering around 10,000, and they'll probably go lower than that. Every time Marvel does that, that's what happens to the sales. The book goes on life support and then is canceled. It is unbelievable to me that the powers that be at Marvel Comics worked hard and paid money to get the franchise for Conan the Barbarian back, only to kill it. But one way or another, I stopped getting those issues when it started to look that way. The initial burst of Conan the Barbarian and the Savage Sword were incredible. They actually read like real comics. But that started slowly to change, so I started slowly to lose interest. And when I was looking at the comic shelves, I was looking at, they have them broken up. They have the one section for new issues, and then the two other sections are back issues broken up by title alphabetically. And I saw Conan. I saw an issue of Savage Sword of Conan, and I thought, okay, well, even if I bought it, I'm not keeping up with any of the storylines, so I wouldn't know anything about what was going on. And I noticed the name Thomas on the cover. Marvel Comics and DC Comics, I'll always credit the creators on the cover. And I thought, okay, well, what is that? What are the odds that they're going to have somebody named Thomas writing a Conan book for Marvel? And it turns out that Savage Sword of Conan number 11 is actually written by Roy Thomas. It's not some other Thomas. It's Roy Thomas. And not only that, but it's drawn by Alan Davis, who is absolutely incredible. He's an absolutely incredible artist. It's classic current year Marvel Comics that there would be no fanfare. That someone like me, I don't religiously buy weekly comics, but I keep an ear to the ground of what's going on in the comics world. I had no idea. Obviously, the people at Marvel Comics either are ashamed that they got two great fan favorite beloved creators to do an issue of Conan, or the people at Marvel Comics are so young and clueless that they don't even know what a big deal it is one way or another to have Roy Thomas write an issue of Conan the Barbarian in 2019. So as soon as, when I glanced at it, it could have been art by Herb Trimpe. I would still have bought it for the joy, for the glory of reading Roy Thomas writing a Conan story. But it turns out it's a great artist as well. So I actually did buy a floppy issue. And along with it, I got a giveaway. Marvel gives away a full-color catalog of their upcoming wares. And I looked at it and thought, why bother? You're not going to read any of it anyway. You don't read Marvel Comics. And I thought, well, it is free. Just because you're in the heart of New England doesn't mean you have to say that free is overpriced. So I got it, and I looked through it to see what might be of interest. And most of it is junk. Most of it is stuff that I'm not going to be interested in at all. There's one storyline that apparently is going to team up a classic iteration of the Avengers with a classic iteration of the Defenders. I don't know who of you will know the Defenders. Once upon a time in the 70s and early 80s, there was another team, a response to the Avengers. The Avengers is a full-blooded team. They have a mansion. They have a roster. They have a charter. The Defenders was a non-team. That's what they called themselves. Led by Doctor Strange and just a loose affiliation of heroes. And this is the lineup that we're going to have. The classic Avengers iteration is Iron Man in his old yellow and red armor. The Scarlet Witch and Vision when they were a couple and maybe even married. Thor when he was normal. He was not a multiple amputee. He did not have only one eye. He was not a falling down drunk alcoholic. He was not unworthy. He was not the long list of horrible degradations that Marvel has done to Thor. He wasn't any of those things. He was just the God of Thunder. And Captain America. And if you'll notice, that is also a classic iteration of the lineup of the Defenders. And you're going to notice something right away when you look at those two teams, which is that the Defenders are enormously more powerful than the Avengers. The Defenders are Doctor Strange, who can turn anybody into a bunny rabbit, so the fight's over right there. The Valkyrie, who is an Asgardian warrior from Thor's hometown. The Silver Surfer, who has the all-powerful cosmic power. The Hulk, and the Submariner. That is an unbeatable team. And it might be interesting to get a series that it would be great to see that the iterations of those old teams again, but probably not, considering these are going to be $5 a piece. That's probably not going to be interesting enough. So I looked instead for collected editions, which are the things I usually get. And I saw a couple. There's one miniseries that Marvel is doing. Again, they're floppy issues, so I probably won't indulge with them. But it looks like they are going to take what anybody who is a Conan fan, a Robert E. Howard fan, would say is a great idea, and bring Solomon Kane into the Marvel Robert E. Howard lineup. That would be fantastic. Unless they do him wrong, that would be fantastic. But when I looked to the collected editions, I saw a couple of things that did look of interest. So I thought I'd show those to you just to wrap up this comic book day. One of them is this, the next volume, the next omnibus of Savage Sword of Conan, which has this weird thing that is Janine Garofalo. Isn't that Janine Garofalo posing on the cover? But if you look real small down there in the tiny little details, you'll see there's a Ned Rorem, there's a Rorem, a great painted cover from the Savage Sword of Conan 50 years ago that will be the direct market edition. So, of course, that will be the one to get. And then there was another one. There was, yes, this thing here, which I got on this channel once upon a time and got rid of it right away. I sent it out to one of you right away. This is a reprint of a big omnibus of Giant Size X-Men. So the direct market cover, or the specialty market cover, will have the great original cover that is Gil Kane artwork inked by Dave Cockrum, who would go on to pencil the whole series. And in the inset there, you can see the direct market thing, which is, I don't recognize the artist's name. It's a very stylized version of the same cover. This was from Giant Size X-Men #1. I remember going to the comic shop. I went to the comic shop every week when this came out. This was on the stands for, I think, 50 cents or something like that. And I looked at it and I thought, okay, well, in the background is my X-Men. There's Cyclops and Angel and the Beast and Jean Grey and Iceman. But who are these people on the front cover? I vaguely recognized Wolverine, who had already appeared in the Hulk. And way in the background is Cyclops with a different visor, a bigger visor on his head. But I didn't recognize any of these other people. I thought, oh my, what's going on there? And I bought it and loved it. Absolutely loved it. Giant Size X-Men #1, where we're introduced to an entirely new team. And it turns out, when he's not on the cover, but it turns out that when you read the issue, Wolverine is not the only pre-established character on this team. Sunfire, who had been a villain in Iron Man, but who is a mutant from Japan, is on the team. And so is Banshee, Sean Cassidy from Ireland, who also had been a villain in the X-Men movie, in the X-Men comic book. They're not on this cover. I kind of wish they were. But those two omnibus editions, I will probably get. I'll order them at a bookstore and get them with an employee discount. But all the rest of it, in this thing, this was free. But I didn't see anything at all that would interest me. So that is my my comic book day. A couple of things that I'll put in a folder as mental notes, and Roy Thomas writing Conan the Barbarian. Incredible. Just incredible. Hope it continues. There is a box at the back here for the next issue, but you can see it just says Savage Sword of Conan #12. It doesn't say anything about whether or not Roy Thomas is coming back. I'll keep an eye out for it. Or rather, I'll probably have Mark and Deb keep an eye out for it here rather than go to the comic shop myself. But if it's Roy Thomas again, I'll grab it again. And that's it. That is your Comic Book Wednesday. But you thought you weren't going to get a Comic Book Wednesday with me up in Vermont. But they do have comic stores up in Vermont. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.